Nope. It's raining again, and here I sit in my little crate in my big old barn, by myself staring at the wall. I tell you what, at least it's built up to where I don't have to worry about the water running in here unless it floods, and then that's hurricane stuff, and I got bigger issues. So, yeah, where were we? I guess I need to do an old school, like, recap, like, previously on, and let everybody know, but I said I sitting in the kennels, me and Doc, and the invasion group, the Allies is what we found out they were calling themselves. We're pushing closer to our little camp that we were in. It wasn't our camp, we were just in it, locked up cages. And they come in here, and Army guys went to yelling at the militia guys, and we told them, it's like, you need to evacuate these people or something, and if you yell, it's like, no, we're not going anywhere, kind of deal. It's like, a couple of guys got hit, and we need medics, and like, we're locked in your cage, dude, like, I don't know what the hell to tell you. And so they came over and unlocked that shit, and got out there, and they started dragging guys over to the tables, and there was already guys that was hurt, and we was trying to doctor them or whatever. And then something blew up over by the road. What I've learned since then is probably an RPG. These guys were shooting at him. Mule's getting nervous. He's good with, gunfire going around him, but explosions are a different thing. So I kind of motioned Doc. It's dark. It is like, gunfire going nuts. We should get the hell out of here, kind of deal. And, the sun's coming up, but, whatever. And she's these guys here. I was like, these are the guys that are locked us in a cage. I don't know if we need to do that, whatever. So we had mentioned it, we had mumbled about it before. I was like, screw it. Man, this is about to get overrun, man. I don't want to be here trying to save these idiots and let me in a cage. So I went over and went to saddling up Mule. Mule could tell what was going on. He was excited. He was pointing the opposite direction of all that horribleness that's going on. I was like, screw it. I loaded up. I didn't have a shotgun anymore. I kept that, but I had everything else. I took that pistol out of that bag and just put it in my lap, left the rifle underneath it. It's just too unwieldy when you're trying to ride. So I kind of tucked that pistol into that little notch hole right below the saddle horn, and I just rode into the camp over by where Doc was. She's tying off a guy's, bandages on his legs or whatever, and he's passed out. Nobody seems to notice me. I'm on a animal. I am on horseback, muleback, And got in there, stuck out a hand, come on. I wanted to hit her with the old Terminator stuff, come with me if you want to live. I stuck my hand, I was like, come on, let's go. So I did it. I was like, hey, come with me if you want to live. And she grinned a little bit, reached up, grabbed hold of me, and I pulled her the hell up on that mule, and we took off northeast, not back towards the home, man. So we cut through this little pasture down this little road. I swear I heard a couple of people shouting and a bullet or two whizzing past us here, but I don't think it was the people that had us locked up shooting, or the invaders shooting at us. I couldn't tell who was going on. We just kind of ducked down as much as that mule could move. So we bolted out there. By midday, nobody was following us. We was just walking along, and then we just trying to figure out where the hell are we going now, And we cut across, we're on Cemetery Road, heading back up towards Dickinson, And I said, I still want to get over to my mother's house, check there. I asked, you got any family? She was like, they left, And pretty sure grandmother didn't make it, so she's like, well, I need to get to them, but they're, days ahead of us somewhere else, so we'll catch up to them when we can, closer to my mother's, and then we can figure out something. So I started thinking in my head, I was like, shit, it's a we, huh? It's a duet, let's do this thing. So at least I'm out here by myself. But when you're not traveling by yourself, then it becomes, I gotta find food for two. I gotta find water for two. And now it's me, her, and Mule. So I gotta find water for a big ass animal. Water for both of us. Food for us. Mule can eat grass, but that ain't, the only thing good for him, So So I had an idea we could head over to Dickinson. There's an old feed store. And we can go by there and see if we can find anything. Hopefully they'll have some stocked up water, and if not, the bayou's right there. And it should be hopefully clear of most of the nastiness since the last flood. So we headed that way. And man, right up there close to where it runs into 5 whatever the hell. 517, 518, whichever one runs through Dickinson. I can never tell which one's which. I lived right next to one of them for 5 years. There's an exotic animal park. And we used to, move animals and buy animals, and always knew the guy that used to own it. And Clint, I don't know who runs it now. A buddy of mine did some welding work out there. Said there's a woman that's running. I said, I don't know. But we get out there and the gates are just knocked the hell over. The wooden signs are all blown down. They're made out of like plywood. Wildlife park, whatever. And I said, man, if we're going to be letting animals loose, we need to come in here. And they got some buildings and stuff in there too that are relatively safe, or were. Because you got exotic animals out there. You got to have good buildings. At the very least, we can go open some gates and hope for the best. And we went in there, and I could see a couple of the deer, because they always had a big field of deer and antelope and stuff in there. I could see a couple of them out there. And so we found this gate, big automated thing, but we just slid open. No power to hold it shut, man. Just kind of shouldered it open. I was on foot, and I left Doc up on mule. I got that little pistol. I got it tucked in my bag again. There's no imminent threat now. And, well, that's what I thought. So I got up there. We went to phone. I said, "Well, leave this out here. I know there's a cattle gate. Keeps most of them in here. But we'll take some of that plywood and throw it across there on the way out, just to make sure they got a spot." Because they used to have rhinos and giraffes and alligators, and as soon as I thought about the alligators, I was son of a bitch. And sure enough, they had a whole bunch of them in this great big area, but the flood just allowed them to swim right over the top, and they was just everywhere you look, and it's like, oh, antelope and a deer, and there's a zebra, and then there's a mysterious looking log that looks like it's creeping, and got out there, and most of the gates had big locks on them, so we got over to the building by dark, avoiding all the mysterious logs and alligator-shaped bushes, and there wasn't nobody there. I didn't believe that they would intentionally abandon anything like that, so they had to be somebody somewhere. But we got to that big main building where they had the little pettings in and stuff, and those critters looked half miserable. You can tell where they swam around a little bit. There's bodies 1 or 2 around, and I felt horrible for them. So, went inside, and in the office, I seen the feet of a body behind the desk, and so that would explain that. So I kind of scrambled to find the keys of what I could. We're going to turn loose what we can, man. If we get in trouble for turning a rhino loose in Galveston County, that's on me. So we went out there trying to find every enclosure we could unlock, open, and prop the gate open. And, if I hadn't found the person, I would have suggested staying there as it was getting dark, man. Time flies. If you ain't got a car, just I want to drive over here, and it takes nothing. Where if you're on foot or even on horseback, that's a 4-hour mosey, So the days just seem to be blowing past. So we don't want to stay nowhere there's that many alligators and hungry critters, So we opened the gates and just kind of shuffled away from them as quick as we could, keep from getting run over. And got out there, and them signs that were torn down, just take them and lay them across them cattle gates. Hope for the best. Critter got to find a way out. They'll find a way out. If there's an open gate and something to walk across, they'll be all right. So I didn't want to stress it too much. So we got up, and there's a little housing thing up the road that they're still working on. That's perfect. So, we got over there, creeping to get dark, but there was one of these houses that was still being built, so the walls were missing, so we could ride mule right inside. There's nobody out there, there's construction gear around, and there's wood. So we picked us a little fire. Out there, got my little fire starter out of my kit, and, started the sterno can, and, got the wood burning, just the dregs and stuff that didn't float off. And sat there, and we just got to catch up, and I think it caught up to Doc. keep running out of tape. But I tell you what, I actually was looking for my little blanket here. There's rain coming in. It's still August-ish. A little thunder in the distance. That's a little unnerving. But instead of just being hot and wet and sticky, it had like a cool chill to it. It wasn't just miserable hot rain. This was, I guess, what they'd call sweet summer rain. This was pretty nice. Thunder getting a little closer. I keep seeing the flash in the distance, but I figured it was just heat lightning. But I guess it's getting over here. So left ways outside of Dickinson over there, and man, it hit Doc pretty hard. Our family taking off, had to take off without her, and her being locked up in a cage. No, this rain gets me every time. And her being locked up in a cage and having to deal with the jackass racists and, the people that we did lose or whatever. And just the state of the world, man, it piles up on me. And I'd had my feeling with this couple nights ago, or hell, a week ago. It's kind of hard to keep track of time nowadays. But we're sitting there on the fire, mules sitting over under and where the stairwell is. And, I pulled a saddle off of them and sat and leaned on it, like an actual cowboy, and got the rifle out, made sure it worked since I didn't have my shotgun anymore. So I had like one shotgun round in my pocket. I'll have to find me a different one. Well, we sat by that fire. I got a couple more cans of food out of my bag that I still had. We didn't refresh it when I was there. Didn't have time. They barely fed us anything. Didn't have access to it. So we sat there, and I don't know what the hell to say to somebody. I'm not good at reassuring people. I think Bruce Willis said it once. I feel like a brain surgeon trying to do surgery with gloves and using a pipe wrench, and as a palsy victim, and so socks, tell me about them or whatever, trying to distract her, but all it did was make her cry harder, think about her pain. I was like, well, let's plan now. So where do you think they went? How do you think they're going to get there? What's your plan? And it slowed her down a little bit to get that active brain, like, hey, how are we getting out of this? What are we going to do? I went to get some more wood, and she was warning me, like, don't make it too big. We're not trying to make a beacon on everybody. We noticed there was still no power left. Whereas, like, not even the solar stuff. We're getting closer to Houston, going north. I guess, electric stuff still fried from the blast of the EMP stuff. So we sat in there talking again and made plans. But she said that she was going to ride with me down to Mom's place first. And I appreciated her for that. But it's this whole big deal. We sat there, you could hear the wind, but, we could see the sky for a while, Here lately, it's been mostly dust and smoke and then rain clouds, But we could see it. They looked a different color, and the whole, near the skyline, looks like a brown haze, I sat down there, and then we started talking about, the nihilist in us. It's like, well, this house will probably never be finished. If it does, the owners might be a little different. There was a guy that I grew up with, and him and his father lived in a garage. He's right next to the bones of this big 2-3-story house that they was making. And when they were building it, his mom, the guy's, his dad's wife, his mom, had got cancer and died. And so they just lived in the garage. They just couldn't bring themselves to finish that big ass house. And, that'll make somebody, think twice. And this whole thing, this whole deal is just over the top. Like, I feel like we're living in a movie. And as somebody who loves movies and books and LARPs and plans and video games and stuff, I've been spending my entire life waiting for one of these apocalypse situations to kick off. And it seems all of them landed on us all at once, So to have it there, and then there's planning and thinking, and then actually doing it. It's a whole different mess. So we sat there talking how to plan with the new information we had and what was going on. And our MREs ended up, there was no furniture, nothing there. Like I said, there's a saddle, so we just kind of propped it up tall ways, put the horn on the floor, put the blanket on underneath it, give it something to sit on and lean against that saddle. against the studs near us, that big open. I guess it's like a foyer area we're sitting in. You know, like the walls are all just 2x4s. There's not even like plywood on them. I'm surprised this part's even standing after the storms, you know. But I guess if there's nothing to hold it in to deal with the pressure, it's just the roof, and most of the roof was missing shingles anyway. So, you know, so we sat there just bullshitting, planning, and then talking and just rambling on like you do, you know. Well, now here's this story about my hometown. Here's this horrible thing that happened to me, or this funny thing, just trying to distract somebody's brain. And we ended up just passing out, and I don't think Mule got any sleep. He never laid down, so he got that half-ass standing sleep that, you know, horses and stuff get. I guess he just didn't feel like laying down on the concrete. I did wake up to the smell of mule pee, so that was a rude awakening. But it was right before the sunlight, so we decided to get a head out, and we'd head into town, you know, and see if we could grab anything. You know, our food stores are getting low, we need water. You know, we stopped in the ditch, still had water in it, and at this point, man, it's like, it's relatively clean. It's a lot of rain, but there's fallout from this bombing stuff. There's this, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully all that's flushed out by now. But Mule didn't care. Sat down there and drank, you know, his belly full of water. And we got up. We took turns riding a mule in town, but we was only about a mile or two out from, you know, the city line proper. But as we got closer, we realized that, you know, it wasn't the sun coming up that we were looking at. We were pointing the wrong direction. But most of it, you know, it looked like fire. So we got down there, and there's a big apartment complex down there on the left. It was just smoldering, burning. Some of the buildings were still standing there, just rolling on fire, and some of them were down to nothing. Like it just went through there uncontrolled, like nobody did nothing about it. You get a little further, you get to that little cross section with 646, little gas stations over there. So we went in there, grabbed us a couple of drinks that we could find. Hell, there was an energy drink. I said I'd save that for later when I didn't need it. The adrenaline was just going nuts. You know, there's a couple of unstomped on bags of chips and stuff we cut with a can. There was a couple of cans, like beef stews and stuff I guess truckers are into. So we loaded up as best we could. We were going to try to make it that feed store on the far side of 45. But we got out there, man, the bank was all but busted and flooded. You can tell it wasn't worth anything. All the other shops, like there was a vape smoke shop, that some bitch was just completely empty, just wiped the hell out. And we got on the road, got down there closer to where the shopping center was. Now this is one exit up from where that Walmart was the third night, you know, third, fourth night when everybody was out there. This is one exit up. And this place looked like a war zone out of a movie. There was barely a building wall standing higher than chest high. Everything was blowing up, burnt, scorched bits and pieces of it all over the place, whether it was a hurricane or a gunfight. There's brass everywhere, so there's gunfighting going on too. But what the hell happened first, you know? There was a brass from here that rinsed down the river when everything flooded from the second hurricane. What in the actual hell? But we come out there, and about a quarter mile from the road, we come across where there used to be the little lumber yard I worked in. It's just an empty foundation now. Even the buildings they left standing after they demolished it were just gone. You know, big, you know, aluminum, you know, covered lean-tos, and they're just flattened. But that's where we started coming across bodies. There was people out there, and there was guys in the uniform of these Allied guys, and then there was people in street clothes, and then there was guys that just random mixed match, like Vietnam era camo. But we didn't hear anything. Like the wind was still whistling a little bit. You know, if there was any flags, they wouldn't have been standing completely up, but they wouldn't be hanging still. You know, they'd be flapping a little bit. And we slowly started moseying our way down there. I left Doc up on the horse. I kind of felt bad. I said, maybe I want to climb over. It kind of makes you a target out here in the middle of this. And she was like, no, this way I can see ahead or whatever. It was her argument. I said, okay. You know, so I'm carrying that rifle and I'm looking around. Nobody's moving, and these people have been going for a while. The smell and the bloat kind of tells you that. And we got up close to the road. We was over by that gas station right there next to 45. We was going to go inside there. We got up close to the door, and you could hear something coming up the road. There was suddenly vehicles on 45 coming northways. One squeaking and all kind of metal racket, and there's a diesel running, or 2 or 3 vehicles, so there was something headed towards us. So we ducked inside and got Mule inside, tried to hide behind the hot dog roller, you know. we back out on our road. I got you all hooked up. Tape recorder tied to my chest here. I think I'm gonna head a little southeast-ish. Head out this way. You're starting to get low on food and water again. I guess need to get out here and try to do some kind of farming, I guess. I'm gonna try to keep it up, but it's just me, so who the hell knows? I've never been one with a green thumb. That was always my mother and my grandfather. I'm gonna head this way out towards 2004. There's just a long stretch between here and like Lake Jackson Clute where it's just open ass fields, right? Just salt grass. But there's some houses at the edge of town headed that way before you hit to that gas station. So, and the plant that's out there, I guess it's still out there. Haven't heard nothing from it. Maybe they shut it down proper. So I'm gonna head that way and see what I can find. Buddy of mine, Paco, Andy's brother, had a place out here somewhere, setting it up for his family, but I don't know what happened to them. Haven't heard from them, so maybe I'll poke my head in here. Where were we? Oh, so it was me and Doc and Mule, and we huddled in that little gas station over there. All the glasses busted out. Tough feet, so I wasn't worried about it unless there's any big shards or anything. So I kind of tried to kick what I could, and we ducked in there. I could hear that squeaking ass metal, and the trucks up stopped, and it was a tank coming over the damn overpass, man. Is what that squeaking track noise was, and a couple of diesel trucks, and it's coming over. And it wasn't in a hurry, but I remember the tanks back in the day used to show us videos of them just driving real fast and running and just jumping and all kind of stuff, just super fast. This one didn't seem to be going that fast. Maybe they just kind of surveying the rest of this area, worried about an ambush or something. So we got in there, trying to get Mule behind one of these, standing Twinkie stand things, just kind of sitting there. And I don't know what it was, if there was a sound that we couldn't hear of a horse or a donkey somewhere else, or if it's the sound of that tank treads or whatever. But Mule, for whatever reason, started making that donkey noise. This stuff just loud, just like calling to the world. I don't know if he finally upset and was mad that he was inside a building or whatever, so it seemed to just echo. And holy hell, my blood froze. Doc's eyes got ginormous. I'm like, I fucking know. You can't grab him by the face and shut him up, And it's everywhere. So we sit there quiet. And he got his ears up and was looking around. I guess he's waiting for a reply or something. But the truck and the tracked vehicle or whatever tank was didn't seem to notice, or didn't seem to care if they did notice. They just kept going right along. But you could hear it stop. I guess he's about a quarter mile up the road on the other side of that overpass, that big flat area, over close to about where that Walmart was, and he kind of stopped over there. You could hear the diesels running, but they weren't moving anymore. So we were just scrounging around what we could around us. Again, gas station. It's like, there's not more food there than there is in grocery stores, but there's more grocery stores or gas stations than there is grocery stores, right? So, I grabbed whatever. I did grab a Twinkie. Give Mule a dirty look and threatened him a little bit. I don't think he noticed. Just kind of stared at me like wide-eyed, like, why didn't you say something too? But, going south down that way is going to be a little rough. So we're going to try to cut through town, back through where the Chaparral Club. We're going to have to go on the feeder down until we get to the first little turn by the cemetery. And we're going to duck down through there and try to take the back roads. Hopefully, nothing horrible is going to get there. So we were going to go down the old Galveston Road and try to take it that way, but that sounds like a horrible idea. So with the fighting down on 6 and fighting down here, we're going to run parallel 646 going south. Try to make it over to Mom's house. Once we get a little further down the road, mostly in the ditch, trying to keep an eye on everything. I was talking to Doc. I said, man, it's going down here. This going to get crazy. And you ain't got to come down here. And she's like, well, who's best to have with you if you're going to go down here and get shot is a doctor, Touche, I guess, So we got down to feeder. We couldn't really see the people from where we were, but we was getting close to that damn old cemetery over there is ready to cut in, and you could hear gunfights and screaming going off down the road right before we went to cut off. And I was like, oh, either they saw us or not, but we hurried down that little road there. Cemeteries there, bayous, little ways over. Ain't too bad. The bridges were still up, which I remember in the beginning. It's weird to me. Like, I haven't gone that far north in quite a while. I don't know if those bridges are still standing or they use them as choke points. And if they aren't standing, how in the hell am I supposed to get over the Dickinson Bayou trying to go anywhere else? But so we come back. We got on that little road, and it's pretty much a long straight shot once you get down there and take another left. It runs parallel 646, but it was always slower because it wasn't a main road. So there were just little houses and stuff down there. We kept poking around the corner, and we saw one that didn't look tore up or there wasn't nobody around because we didn't see much of nobody. I don't know if they just ran out or went and found a mall like a zombie movie or something or what. But we didn't see people down that back road. I expected on the back roads to see somebody, at least a hillbilly with a gun, let's stay off his property or something. They were down in there was a car or something busted down on the side of the road or just abandoned or sitting in a parking spot, up front. And the driveway. And we go and check it, see if it was open. A lot of them windows were busted and they was already raided, but if there was anything that looked like it could be useful, found a bit of rope in one, and, a couple of bottles of water in the back of another. So me and Doc chugged those like it wasn't anything, man. We were just short on that kind of stuff. You could find energy drinks and carbonated stuff, and a lot of alcoholic stuff had been raided out of most of those places. But you can find some of them, a lot of like seltzers and stuff, and that shit just burns. And I'm allergic to alcohol, so that was never good anyway. But you can find some of that stuff. But just straight water seemed to be one of the first things that go, along with toilet paper, because people are dumb. So we got out there and we did what we could. Went down that road. Didn't see much of nothing. Wind picked up a little bit in the afternoon. We got down there across 1764. We're going to cut back across there where the old police station was. And we got down there. There was another group of people sitting at the old softball parks over there. And they weren't threatening us, whatever. There's a couple of them that had weapons. But they weren't threatening us. They weren't stopping us in the road. They was just kind of waving on, And we kind of waved a little bit. And then somebody went to coughing and hacking, and you could hear somebody vomit in the back. And Doc looked down. She's on mule at the time. She looked down and she said, we got to go check on her. Son of a bitch. I knew just hanging out with somebody else was going to cause me trouble. So we pulled into the little driveway thing there. There's a couple people, and so we can hear people are sick. And this here's a doc, and I know some medical stuff. They slam a nurse. Just untrained and untested, but field medic, the best I could say. And I said, well, you're welcome. I had to give them a damn rifle. For now, they said, which that just, I'm still holding all the damn magazines, but I said, I'll let you take this rifle off me. Again, I didn't tell them about my sidearm in my medical bag, but so we got down there, and it was just civilians, man. There was nobody in any kind of camo. There's a couple of guys that had guns. You can tell they'd never been anywhere but like a range somewhere, And they had their little tents and half-ass RV, stuff that it looked like they'd been pulled in there and dropped off. Like there's no way you can get a truck in there that close. They try to circle up these half-ass RVs, but they were like the pop-up ones on a couple of these. Like you could have carried them by hand, but they trying to stop anybody. I said, that ain't nothing but canvas mesh. But they had them a couple of little spots you can tell where the fire was. But these people looked like warmed over death. Like these are the people you'd expect me out there trying to grab you money and get you food and stuff, whatever. But they was sick. And they had one old barrel in the corner that had tarps around it like he was using it as a rain collector. And this one person fell over with the twitch on the ground. Doc ran over checking on him. And this is when we found out that this was really bad. It was dysentery and all kind of stuff. Like they had bad water and they was getting sick. They didn't have no way to treat it. They really didn't know what was going on with it. They just like, everybody got sick. I figured it was just from being in the heat and being all around this stuff. And this is sickness on normal people that don't know nothing about it, man. So we started trying to work on them as best we could. And it just got worse.